we find ourselves playing games, right? We put on a false front of what we think people want to see from us or what they want to hear from us.
Hi, and welcome to the Living Richly podcast. My name is Rob Dale, and I'm here with Eric Deschamps and Trevor Munn-Venn. And we want to welcome you and just thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this conversation around what does it mean to live our best life, the fullest version of ourselves. We began the conversation in a former podcast, which we do encourage you to listen to. In fact, I would encourage you to take the time to listen to that podcast, the first podcast.
Stop now, go back.
Stop now, hit pause, listen to the first podcast.
Do what you want.
We want to build on that a little bit today as we introduce the concept of what it means to live your best life. If the notion of are you living your best life, is that something that haunts you? You're at the right place, because it's something that has haunted us and is something caused us to really begin a journey of walking through that. In that initial podcast, Eric, you mentioned something that really resonated with me, and I want to kind of come back to that and start with the conversation around that, where you talked about people showing up fully and deliberately.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of an idea of what does it mean? That's just like such a big thought. What does it mean to show up fully and deliberately?
There's so much there, but in essence, when we talk about showing up fully and deliberately, it's getting clear on what really matters to you, what you value, what your best life looks like, not somebody else's version. I think a lot of us end up playing like an extra in someone else's story as opposed to crafting our own. So showing up deliberately and fully means showing up. And it means, I think, showing up now. We're often so stuck living in the past, right? Worried about what's behind us, or we're obsessing about what's coming, that we're missing what's right in front of us. I think showing up fully and deliberately is a sense of paying attention to what I'm doing while I'm doing it, being here and now, and being my most authentic self in that moment.
I love that, because when you think, I'm an introvert, and a lot of people don't know that about me because I talk and yap and, do all kinds of other extroverted things like the two of you do.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But as an introvert, sometimes the idea of, let's say, walking into a room and fully showing up, it's like, no, I'm good with just hiding in the corner and just, chatting with a couple of people, and no limelights on me, no lights on me, all of this kind of stuff. That's not what we're talking about when it comes to showing up fully and deliberately.
No, I mean, there's a piece here where it's really about being present. I actually, as we've been working our way through this, I've been trying to think this through myself as well. I'm not sure we can live richly if we're not present.
Right.
And you said it, like, if we're stuck in the past, or if we're freaking out about the future, or if we're trying to manage every scenario and everybody else out there, if we're not like actually present in ourselves in this moment, how are we ever going to get access to what an experience that's going to feel rich or meaningful, or, in any way linked to what we actually care about, if our attention, our mind, our focus is somewhere else, right? And that being a cast in other people's, somebody else's show, I'm like, yep, that was me. Yeah. Probably some days is. So you said show up fully. I'm like, I think I'm showing up partially. And that's a huge leap forward for me. And I'll take that as I keep trying to take those steps, express who I am, find more of my voice, speak more of my truth, however we want to express that, but in what is the here and now, as opposed to, being so fixated on what happened or what I think is going to happen, which is like an infinite range of possibility, right? So of course it's going to consume any amount of attention I give it, because anything is possible. And so, but all of that has taken me away from here and now. So that notion of truly being present, Man, it's so big. It's so big. But we find moments, right? We find them.
We find, in that deliberate piece, fully is being present, right? Being in the moment. Think of how many times, though, we may try to show up, but we don't show up deliberately. The way that we show up is defined by the audience we're with, depending who we're talking to, where we find ourselves, and we find ourselves playing games, right? We put on a false front of what we think people want to see from us or what they want to hear from us. Living richly, again, it's about you deciding who you are, you choosing who you are, what kind of life you want, as opposed to drifting, coasting, letting other people dictate your choices, your actions, living by other people's expectations. I mean, I was talking to my girlfriend Kate, and we were talking about how mom guilt and dad guilt is a real thing, right? Where we're not showing up fully in the moment because of these false expectations. We don't know where they came from. Somebody at some point said you need to be this way and should behave this way. And we live according to that out of guilt, fear, obligation, as opposed to a clear sense of this is who I am. And my choice is to show up as fully as I can in this moment and bring that person forward, regardless of the outside influence. Not an easy thing to do.
It's not. And I think as you define it the way
it's the understatement of the century.
When you define it the way that you just did, that it helps so much because sometimes we hear it all the time. It's one of the standing kind of statements that we, for people, oh, you want to live a full life, be in the moment, right. And it's kind of like, so I'm out
that used to drive me crazy.
Right. I'm out for a walk and I see a leaf on the ground. And so I'm going to pause and reflect on the leaf because I want to be in the moment. Right.
Just leave it alone, Rob.
Yeah,
leave it alone.
No.
No
dad jokes.
No dad.
No dad.
Come on.
Whoa.
This podcast is going to be full of dad jokes.
It's fair.
Let's be fair.
Dad jokes and lots of Star Wars references.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
But I love that notion of the being present. It's not that. It's something much more deliberate about, and so it takes knowing who you are in order to be able to be present. You've got to really understand, who am I? What matters to me? How do I express that? Then you can be truly present wherever you are and with whoever you are.
It's that being true and bringing forth your most authentic self. And that's a journey, figuring out what that is, who that is. Because again, we need to understand at a really deep level that we're more than the roles that we play. We're more than the responsibilities that we carry. We're more than the relationships that we're connected to. And we're more than the results that we strive for. What's interesting is we often talk, I love the phrase, I've only got so many fucks left to give kind of thing. I love that phrase. Yeah. The reason I think that phrase has become so prevalent, I've only got so many fucks left to give, is because we're giving them in all the wrong places. We're investing our best energy in what other people expect of us. And that's a zero-sum equation. We don't get a positive return on that. No matter how much we try to feed other people's expectations, it doesn't fulfill us. It doesn't leave us feeling happy. And we never quite feel like we make the grade. What if we shifted our energy, our fucks, to the things that really matter? Your relationship with yourself, right? Getting clear about that, because actually that's the one that sets the tone for every other relationship you have, right? And if you're,
I love it. So his approach is actually fuck you.
Yeah. Fuck you. Thanks, Rob. Well, now we're clear on that.
Right?
Yeah.
But think about it. If we're not clear about who we are, and if we haven't gotten settled with that, then we are constantly chasing. One author calls it chasing sunsets. It's like you ever try to chase a sunset? You're there and then it's gone. And then
he's not about to sing Adele's "Chasing."
I am not about to sing. That's a different show.
Okay,
Rob. That's
not again.
Show.
Just checking.
But look for links to my YouTube channel.
I was getting nervous.
Yeah, just kidding. But right, like a sunset, it's like then you wake up the next day and you're going to repeat the process. You're going to chase something that doesn't last. That maybe you may get close to it and almost grab it, but then it's gone.
What do you say to so I had somebody recently say to me, well, I'm just being my authentic self. And what they really were was just being a jerk. Right. They was their opportunity to say, well, I'm just got my voice, so I'm going to just say what I have to say. And, oh, well, does that hurt you? Does that bother you? I don't, what would you guys say to that?
I think they're doing the best they can with what they've got at the time.
Right.
And, if that's what they've got in that moment, that's what they've got. And usually a statement like that means I'm not in a place where I can deal with the discomfort yet of being something other than what is automatic or reflexive. And you know what? That's okay. Like, I get that. There's a million reasons why somebody could end up there. And I don't think any of us are in a situation or a position to judge why they're there. If that's where somebody is, that's where they are, right? In so many ways, I was thinking as you're describing that, Eric, around like not living into other people's expectations, living our own life, all of that. Well, we need to develop some pictures for ourselves of what does it mean to be a dad,
right,
or a Trevor,
right,
or a farmer or whatever. And so we borrow from other people's views and practices and wisdom. Like, we look around. I think the big moment, and maybe it's right, maybe this is about when we become adults,
right,
is when we start to deliberately choose, how am I going to show up in this? Say, my parents gave me this, society gave me that, school gave me this, the media gave me that, like all of that stuff. And we create all these pictures of how we're supposed to do it. Momming and dadding and all of that stuff. Like, all these pictures have come from other places, but there's a moment where we get to choose and say, all right, how am I going to do this? What do I choose? And I think even if we say, no, I am going to choose to do it that way too, at least we chose it deliberately. We might find out later, it's like, oh, that's actually not serving me very well, and we decide to change it. But we also have the freedom to do that, right? The other thing that just, as you said, I was like, whoa. I'm not doing it again. No. All right, I did it once inside and once outside.
What's the reaction most of us get when we listen to Eric for a long time, right?
Wow. So
that was in a good way. That was a good way. Yeah.
So Eric.
Yeah.
When somebody is authentically being an asshole.
Where's that mic
you
cord?
Said it was okay.
No,
what I heard was it was okay.
I'm pretty sure I said fuck you, but it was that point where you said to show up authentically as yourself.
Yeah.
I'm like, at one level, that is truly the most liberating thing you can do.
Right.
But it can also be the most terrifying.
Right.
Because, right. And I'm thinking about me right now, but I'm just going to go, I'm not the only one. This is the thing I keep telling myself. I'm not the only one. This notion that if I already feel like I'm not enough, trying every move I've got to get this sense of worth and feeling of self in the world, and it's not working, and you want me to trot out,
right,
maybe this other version of me that's scared to death to come out and say, listen, here's who I really am. That's actually, for me, that feels riskier.
Right.
And yet, it's the only way through.
Right.
It's the discomfort that comes with saying, listen, I've put up this surface command, so here's what you see, right? And people will create that picture going, that's who Trev is, that's who Eric is, that's who Rob is, right? But then to say, actually, let me show you the real me.
This is who I am.
If they respond poorly to the fake me, I'm like, of course they did. Right. That's okay. It's not really me.
Right.
There's a little buffer there.
Right.
Right. There's this piece around being very raw and very real about going, okay, you know what? At the end of the day, I have to not care what they think, because there is a sense of being stretched so thin and having so little meaning in terms of who we are.
Yeah.
When the distance between authentic self and show self, I don't know what we call that self, gets pulled further and further apart, something's got to give. Yeah. And I think people feel that. I think they start to sense that feeling. Maybe that's what they mean when they say midlife crisis. Like, it gets to a point where that stretch gets so far, something's got to give. And then the question is, in that moment where something gives, are you going to make good, healthy choices? I don't mean like eat your veggies healthy, but like good, productive, right, meaningful choices in your life, or unhealthy choices.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Where we blow up our lives and then say, okay, I got to rebuild this thing.
Yeah. And you don't get there. You don't get there overnight. To your point, it's scary to consider redefining who you are and starting to take more deliberate steps into that authentic self, as opposed to trying to be a superstar, perhaps in someone else's story, or just fading to black as an extra in your own. Finding who you are and then living that on purpose and making those choices, you're going to have to overcome some fear. And how do you do that? Well, you do it little by little. And one of my favorite new phrases, slowly by slowly. It's not about, I think we all experience seasons in our lives, perhaps where we experience significant growth or significant change. But I think the human story, most of it is about micro evolutions, little changes, one after the other, little steps that we take that give us greater confidence to take the next one, right? It's not about jumping off the diving board. It's not about false bravado. It's not about all the nonsense that our culture would tell us. I love my best definition of courage is fear walking, right? Nice. It's not the absence of fear. It's not, it's being able to just say, I'm going to take this step, come what may, I'm going to learn from it, then I'm going to take another, and then I'm going to take another, right? And I think, what is so important in all of this, when we talk about becoming our most authentic self and being that and bringing that forward to the world, in many ways, it's like putting our own signature on the universe, not somebody else's, right?
I like that.
Leaving our dent, leaving our impression, bringing, no one else can do that. I can try to mimic Trevor's, I wouldn't even try to forge his signature. I don't think anybody could. No. It's like, but only he can do that. And I can only do mine.
Yeah. Maybe we'll put his signature in the show notes and invite people. Maybe put a challenge out there. If you can forge his signature, what the hell? Come and talk to us.
If you can forge his signature, I will give you his checking account number.
We'd love to work with you.
I'm here jotting down a note because I'm like, that is so profound, putting your signature on the universe. And you two jokers are like,
I love the idea though that again, journey is such an overused word, and yet it's true in this case that it is a great band. It's true in this case that it is a journey. It's not an overnight thing. I think about most children. Under the age of 5, you see a bunch of kids playing at a playground or whatever. They're just completely lost in the joy and the fun of play. They haven't, again, most of the time, there's exceptions to that, but in most cases they haven't, the scripts haven't been formed. The negative experiences aren't there. It takes often for most of us years into our younger age, into our teen years, into our 20s, where all of a sudden that authenticity disappears, and it's a journey to get to where we lose ourselves. Right. It is a journey to get back to when we find ourselves.
And I think some key elements to that, the key elements in the journey, and I use the language very, very deliberately: radical self-acceptance, radical self-care, radical self-actualization, and radical transparency within a safe community. I think those 4 elements are so important to the journey. This notion of, and I think of my own, my own experience of this, and what changed for me was, for most of my life, not believing I deserved to have a good life. So how could I bring forth my most authentic self? How could I, even entertain this notion of living my best life when I didn't think that I deserved it? And I think there's a lot of folks listening that'll resonate with that, because I think it is one of the common elements of the human species,
and let me just jump in. And if you are resonating with that, I do encourage you to take a listen to Eric's story, because we are deliberately wanting to be as vulnerable and as transparent to
wanting is a strong word.
Yeah. We're choosing whether we want to. We want to welcome you into the journey. And so I'm sorry I'm cutting you off in that thought, but
it's
I wanted to grab.
We do this all the time.
I wanted to grab that thought again for all of those who are listening, that there is a powerful story that you share around your own journey. And so I think that's so important to be able to talk about.
Well, and it's why the word radical is important to me because it's such a move away from what was such a deep sense of self-loathing, that I was flawed, that I wasn't like everybody else, that I didn't deserve to experience good things. And when bad things happened, it was karma. I probably earned that, right? I think radical self-acceptance to me is about learning to make peace with yourself, calling a truce, telling your inner critic to take a walk, and perhaps even giving them their permanent walking papers. You are no longer required. It's about accepting who you are at a very deep level and learning to really love yourself. I use the language when it comes to worthiness and loving yourself well, that I'm still becoming the best version of me, but I'm as worthy as I'll ever be. And I think that's an expression of that self-acceptance. Only then can you move into the second one, which is radical self-care. Again, very hard to consider taking care of yourself when you don't care for yourself. Right? When you don't care about who you are, and
the sequence matters.
The sequence
right?
really, the sequence really matters here. And for me, self-care, putting myself first, that was so foreign. Growing up in an environment where being selfless was championed as a noble and a huge value. And I've come to realize that selflessness is bullshit. It literally means no self. And how can you bring forward your most authentic self when you've completely put self out of the picture? Now, I'm not talking about becoming selfish and self-centered and only thinking about yourself, but think about it for a moment. If we are not putting ourselves first, if we're not putting our oxygen mask on first, that little bit of wisdom that is shared during every briefing when you're about to take off in a plane, put your oxygen mask on first before trying to help others. Why? Because if you don't, at some point, you're going to pass out. You're not going to be able to be of any good to anyone. But when we are committed to radical self-care and we are putting ourselves first, then we will show up better. A better version of us will show up in every role, every responsibility, every result, every relationship. So in many ways, it's actually like the least selfish thing you can do. It is one of the most selfless, if I could borrow that word, even though I don't like it, one of the most selfless things you can do is put yourself first.
To be self more.
Right. Because now when I show up, I'm showing up more fully. I am showing up more deliberately. I'm not showing up like I did most of my adult life, checked out, obsessing about the past, worried about the future, concerned about what people think about me, feeling like I'm operating on fumes, right? And with my tank almost near empty. My kids joke with me because I'm the guy who always drives and see how far can I go once the needle goes empty on that.
I am so the other guy.
Me too. I'm like,
the needle moved. I better fill it up.
But that was a sign.
And we drive Jeeps, so I mean,
it's a
the needle moves and it's done.
It moves very fast. But this notion of that's how I live my life,
right?
With the needle on empty most of the time. But so how can I show up fully? How can I be my authentic self? How can I really love others and show up meaningfully in my relationships with my kids and my relationship with my significant other? When I'm not even at peace with myself, right?
And it takes so much energy to sustain the not you, right? The not authentic version of who you are. And yet when you start being you, there's an energy around managing your own fear of it, right? But the moment you start being you, the amount of energy you expend the flow reverses.
Right.
It's energizing to be you rather than depleting you moment by moment, right? Which is why everybody ends up so exhausted all the time. People say, why am I so tired all the time? I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Maybe your energy is pouring into things that don't need it anymore. And maybe the flow of energy that you're looking for in your life, right, they're not quite ready to reach into yet.
Right. So you go from radical self-acceptance, radical self-care. Now you can move into radical self-actualization. It's this notion of achieving your full potential, living your best life. Some are going to pick up on this podcast and be listening to it and start hearing us talk about living your best life. But again, if you're struggling with self-acceptance, that's where you need to begin the work. It's going to be
try and skip ahead.
You
right?
can't skip ahead.
You
The
can't.
sequence sequence really matters. And for me, that's my journey followed this. And it may be different for different people, but I just don't know how you can possibly envision living a full, rich life and consider upgrading, leveling up, and all of it when you don't love yourself, when you truly don't like who you are, and you struggle with those self-esteem, or with guilt, or with shame, or whatever those other toxic fuels are that we often operate out of. But self-actualization then follows self-care. As I learn to love myself and invest in myself, now I can begin to reach and become even more. I can become that best version of me and reach my full potential. Maslow had that all laid out in his hierarchy of human needs.
And it was a sequence of needs that have to be met, right? Before you become the truest, fullest, richest expression of self.
Right. Well, and we talked about in the previous podcast where we introduced the notion of living richly, we talked about the idea of being instead of doing.
Right.
And to your point, if you take these out of sequence and you try to start with the self-actualization of that potential, you're just going to do a lot more stuff.
You're leaking. It's like there's like you're going to be reaching for stuff.
Yeah.
You're going to be trying to build, and I know I did it. I spent so much time trying to reach.
Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's try this. Whereas again, if you go back to following the sequence of loving, of understanding,
plug the holes in the boat.
Plug the holes in the boat, and now you become. I remember the first time I heard you talk about this was years and years ago now, when you talked about the difference between transformation and change.
Right.
Because what we are talking about when it comes to living your best life is not changing who you are. It's not changing behavior. It's transformation.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that, and I think when you talked about it, the part that stood out to me was this idea that when you transform, you can't go back.
Right.
There's
no going back. It's funny because I use a metaphor of a butterfly. I actually hate butterflies.
Yeah.
You might be the only person in the world who hates butterflies.
You are an angry man.
Wow. You just fly in a straight line.
What kind of farmer are you exactly?
Yeah, he loves bees. But no, screw the butterflies.
I'm working on it. But like the notion of the caterpillar, right?
Yeah.
It goes into a cocoon, withdraws. There's a withdrawal. There's a stepping away from. Then it goes through this very messy, complicated exercise, usually out of sight of others within the cocoon, and then starts to emerge really tentatively at the beginning.
Right.
But at no point does it ever go back to becoming a caterpillar. That's true transformation. There's no going back. It is truly a permanent shift in self, or in this case, I think very often it's a rediscovery of self.
Yeah.
Right. We go into that messy process to connect with who we really authentically are. And and this is where I kind of like, God, I hate that. I need a better metaphor. It just irritates me. But it's that shift, right? Yeah. It's that shift towards self. And you use the word radical. There'll be some people say, I don't know if I'm ready for radical. I'm like,
down.
okay, so but I love that word. So you guys know I love words. So it's from the Latin.
You have the best words.
Don't say that. So it comes from the Latin radicalis, which means to go back to the roots. It's a return to roots, right? So like we're looking at, we got the farm here and stuff. I know. I know some stuff.
What's scary is I have the exact same phrase. Oh, Mr. Smarty Pants. I'm like,
in fairness, my pig Latin
too
is
much
better
time
than
in
my
pig
regular Latin. But the that word, like, so when you hear radical, it's not about you're gonna like flip tables. It's about going to the roots. And to revisit it, to go to source about accepting yourself, to recognizing the truth that at the root of things, you need to care for you. You need to accept you, care for you, become fully you, right? Like you can swap that word, but it is an act. It is a radical act because you are going to the roots. It's just not how we normally use the word, which is like, this person's radical, unexpected, dangerous, scary, whatever.
Right. It's a different.
And I hear that as you describe it but in the other sense, it is a major change. Whenever you go to the root of things and say, I'm going to revisit this, things are about to change.
Things are about to shift. And when you think about radical self-acceptance, if we go back to that one for a moment, what rounds out that whole model or progression is radical transparency in a safe, loving community. I don't think you can learn to love yourself solo, without having a safe place to land, without having folks that love you and won't judge you, will accept you for who you are, good, bad, and ugly, who will say it's okay and we're here for you. And I know that's certainly been our experience. And the true growth. It's amazing how much pain happens within community. Most of our greatest wounds happen because of relationships.
Oh God!
And yet it will be in life-giving relationships that we experience our greatest healing as well. So committing to who's in my life that I can share this journey with. And listen, for many years, I thought I was all alone. So for anyone listening, I want to say this to you. If you're saying authentic community, friends who love me, safe place to land, I don't have any of it. I feel all alone in this world. Perhaps that's why you're listening to this podcast. Maybe we can be that community for you for a time until the universe opens other doors for you. But you're not alone. You're never as alone as you think. You're never as stuck as you think you are.
And I think it's good to, even encourage those that are listening and those that are watching to continue to subscribe to the podcast, because we will even talk about in future podcasts, how do you find that community? Right. What are the characteristics and the elements of a community that will, because that's such an incredible thought. You cannot learn to love yourself solo. Right? This idea. And there's so much truth. I think if you try to do that, you're going to get a false set. Then you go off. That's, see people that go off on the deep end, because they don't have, one of the things I appreciate so much about the relationship I have, with you guys is, in some ways you're those guardrails,
right?
That you keep me
from
going
God knows you need
off,
guardrails,
right?
brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to drive over the rails. Yes. Again,
that's why we have Jeeps.
You just always want to go off road.
Yeah, it's always about off road. But there is that sense of your community. If it's the community is done well and is the right community, is going to help guide you on that journey, on that path.
100%.
You talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And we get to self-actualization. So he has an unpublished paper, like it never ended up in a journal, but authored by him, where he late in his life where he goes, self-actualization wasn't it. He said, it's when self-actualized you and self-actualized me start to live and work in community.
Wow.
Right? Because he said, how can the ultimate of the human experience be a solo, individualistic, even though they're highly evolved all on their own, right? And it makes so much sense. You go to any wisdom tradition, faith tradition, philosophy, or quantum mechanics, and it'll tell you everything in the universe is connected.
Yeah.
So we think we're going to accomplish and reveal the truest version of who we are in all of our glory on our own. No, that's literally out of alignment with the universe. So any way you want to tackle it, right?
Right.
It's going to play out where there is a piece around togetherness. I think part of what we learn over time is the judgment to identify who are those people who are genuinely there to support us, to care for us, to love us, right? And bit by bit to bring them into our lives.
Right.
What happens is other people start to leave as well. We don't always have to push them out. Sometimes that's required.
Right people for the right leg of the journey, right?
Exactly.
But the point is, we need others. We need others in this process. We need a community of supportive people that are on the path. Doesn't mean they're at the same distance. They haven't traveled the same way, but they're on the path. They're on that path of growth. I'd love to shift gears and introduce another concept that I think really helps us tease out this whole notion of living your richest life, living your best life. And that's this notion, or the symbolism between the four elements. Been around for millennia, right? This is age-old wisdom that talks about the four elements of wind, which often represents spirit or soul, fire, which represents heart, water, which represents the mind, and earth, which represents the body. And as I've been exploring this journey along with you guys, I came to define, one of the ways I define living richly is actually having full access
access to mind, body, spirit, heart. Because for so much of my experience, part of those things were activated and other parts of it were dormant or neglected. And it's become a powerful model for even as I was beginning to envision what does my best life look like, to be able to check in with myself and say, what does my mind at its best look like? What does my heart fully alive look like? What does my spirit fully alive look like? What does my body tuned up look like? Because I think so many, and we've talked about the notion of how the physical is tied so much to the mind, how those two elements really connect together. But would love your thoughts on like your best mind. What are some things that come to mind when you think of your mind fully alive?
Now I want to think.
I know. It's
Maybe
like,
my mind isn't fully alive.
You know, when I hear you talk about the four elements, and I love that you talked about even in your own experience how there are times when some, one or two of the elements is fully engaged, the other ones are, and I think that's probably true for most of us, is that we go through life where we set priorities around it based on whatever's going on in life, where we focus in. I know that in the past there have been times when, for me, when it came to that really engaging my mind, I was focused in on certainly on mindset, on what I'm capable of. I did a lot of reading around the notion of mindset, the idea of changing and thinking through mindset. One of the most powerful books, and we'll put a link to the books in our show notes as well. But it was a book by a CrossFit coach by the name of Ben Bergeron, and he wrote a book called Chasing Excellence.
That's a good book.
And it's such a great book. And he talks about in there, he's asked the question, would you rather have an athlete with all the talent in the world or a strong mindset? And he surprises people by saying, I would actually rather an athlete with talent over mindset, because I can train their mindset. I can help them develop a mindset. Talent, you've either, to some degree, you can practice, you can get better. At some point, he says that at the CrossFit Games, every athlete has the same talent. The ones who win are the ones with the mindset. And as a coach, that's where he puts his focus. And I know for me, when I am fully engaged and fully confident in showing up as I am, it's when I am in a strong and healthy place mentally, where my mind, where I'm looking at the being things that I'm doing and being mentally fit. Right. That's what I'm working on. Work out that mindset is certainly for me been one of the secrets to getting down this road and this journey of living my best life.
Yeah.
I think the transformation for me was a shift, certainly in my thought life.
Right. I was going to head as well.
My thought life was negative. My thought life was scattered. My thought life was filled with scripts and superscripts, and we'll explore those in future episodes. But it is feeding the mind. It is about sharpening your mindset. It's about choosing your thoughts and your beliefs more deliberately, more carefully. It's about facing reality with increasing maturity. It's about challenging the lies that we've come to believe about ourselves, and to evolve our perspective and to feed our intellect. I mean, there's so much we can explore there. But then this other notion of, well, you can get your mindset on point, and you can be more positive and you can be more deliberate in your thought life. But what if you're carrying all these toxic emotions around of unforgiveness towards yourself or towards others? Like, it's one thing to have a mind that is clear, but I wanted to have a heart that's clean. I wanted to, like learning how to, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't go to school to learn how to manage emotions. And as most typical guys, you start talking about feelings, and like we basically have one.
Sorry, did you use that plural?
I learned. And we joke about this, but actually all the research will show for men specifically, and obviously it's three guys here, and we're going to be bringing some definitely lots of female perspective to the show with some of our guests and the rest of it. But I think men, the only real emotion that they are present to most of the time is anger, is rage, and often that anger is pointed inside, right?
A baby has three emotions: happy, sad, angry.
Right.
Like happy, sad, and mad. It's like those are the three. I'm like, they probably so. Right. The risk in what you just described is for a lot of guys, like they regress from a baby who has a broader emotional range.
Right.
And it's because in so many ways, like our ability to actually spend time with emotion in it, right? It's the other expression people use to say, well, you have to process your emotions. Okay.
How do I do that?
Yeah.
Right, but there's no
thanks.
how-to guide around that. Like that's something we put a lot of energy in.
Right.
I think that's for another day as well. Yeah. But to say like, how can you actually name what you're feeling?
Right.
Right. So feeling is a physical experience, right? We think it's mental, it's emotional, it's up the heart. Like, yeah, but it shows up in your body. It release of chemicals, change of breathing, change of state, like a whole bunch of stuff happens that creates a feeling, which we then put a sticker on it.
Right.
And we name it. But then if we can do that much, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
If we can actually understand what is that, like functionally, feelings are functional. So when people are saying, no, I just repress a feeling or I'm not going to feel that or whatever, say, I'm going to shut off functions of my body
right.
that are here to keep us alive, help us thrive, help us do all the things that we need to do, keep us safe, help us know what to do and not to do, all that. You want to shut that off?
Right.
You want to shut that off.
Right.
Right. Like it's a terrible idea.
It's emotional numbness, right?
Right.
Where like parts of us aren't alive anymore. And numbness is often, again, we talked about numbing pain in our first episode. And so many of us are emotionally numb. We have such a narrow range, and think of how can we truly experience all that life has to offer when we're so limited emotionally, right? Having access to grief. I mean, that's a whole other, how many of us do grief very well? But this notion of our heart, our relationships, the way we manage ourselves and self-regulate emotionally, I think is an important aspect of living richly.
Well, and how they tie in together, right?
Huge.
Because
they're all connected.
We hear people say this all the time. Oh, you make me angry, or that made me sad, or whatever. Nothing can control you. The first mindset is I control my emotions.
Right.
I'm the one that I think and I choose the emotions that I have. And so how those two tie in together.
You just threw that off like it was nothing. That is such a potent, dangerous, problematic, loaded statement.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I love it. Like I don't want it to go by without people realizing how profound that what you just said is. Because you just said, like, everyone is like, yeah, that person makes me feel this, or I've got all this stuff in my life. These are all the feelings, and here's where they came from. You just said, actually, you have control
own your feelings.
Over,
own your feelings.
You can control that. You
right.
can change that. You
right.
have more power than you think you have.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Which is both a great gift, but also pretty daunting as well, because right, we're carrying around heavy stuff. Like we've all been through really difficult things, and it's really easy to say, well, I don't feel that because of what I did. I feel that because of what they did or what happened.
Right.
It's like life is full of they and things that happen. You still have that power and that choice, right? The other book is like Viktor Frankl. So first off, Ben Bergeron, love you, man. So if you ever listen to the podcast, thank you.
Love to have
You're
you
doing
on.
good stuff.
Right.
That's right. Love to have you on. The Viktor Frankl is the other one, Man's Search for Meaning, where he talks about these extraordinary circumstances in concentration camps and about how people respond, saying it does not matter how much you take from people. We always have the capacity to choose how we're going to respond, even if that response is about how I'm going to feel about what's happening. And he uses an example that you cannot trump, that you cannot beat. You cannot find a more complete, absolute situation than what he went through and what he witnessed. And so there's kind of a truth that has been tested to the extreme in that case, but to know that we always have the capacity to choose our thoughts.
Right.
And to choose our emotional state,
Right.
is we're going to have to talk about
We're
this
gonna be
more
explaining
later.
that
It's
for
just
sure.
so
Yeah,
big.
for sure.
It's
Well,
so
we
big.
do need to because we're going to start to land this plane, but
Right.
we've only covered two elements.
Right. So that's where I was going next. That's where I was going next.
Let's look at the other elements.
We talk about upgrading our mind. I think living richly, there's this whole notion of how do I upgrade my thinking? How do I upgrade my mind? How do I expand my heart?
right, is the one we were just talking about. And then there's this whole notion about leveling up your spirit. And listen.
All right, you two, talk about spirit here, guys.
We won't go too deep here because we could really go deep. But listen, spirituality means different things to different people. It could be a faith construct. That's where I spent most of my life. And I'm not in that same faith construct anymore. Spirituality means something very, very different to me now. And we'll explore that again in a future episode. But it could be as simple as connecting to nature. It could be as simple as, for some, a connection to the universe. There's this sense of being connected to something greater than yourself, being enlightened.
Jedi.
Well,
yeah,
so
come on. Now.
I have to say, it's part, even as a kid, even as an adult, this notion of being connected to something greater than yourself, that there is a force or there is an energy that can't be explained, that one can tap into and really fuel your efforts and fuel your best life. And I've always told people, I'd love to be two things. One, I'd love to be a Jedi, and I'd love to be a ninja. If you could combine those two things, I would be a really happy camper.
Don't think so. I just ruined Star Wars.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. and in the interest of time, let me move to there's this notion of being connected to source or leveling up your spirit. And then this is where most of us go usually when we talk about upgrading our lives or making changes, tuning up our bodies. This is the notion, my newest mantra, my goal is to live long and live strong, right? To eat well, to exercise, to move my body, right? We talk about movement being medicine. Yeah. Again, it's a place that it's the easy place most people go to because they want to feel better, they want to look better. There's so many benefits to that, but this notion of tuning up your body. So when you look at that model as a whole and begin to envision, again, what would upgrading my mind look like? For me, what would expanding my heart look like? What would leveling up my spirit? What would tuning up my body? All of a sudden now, when we talk about creating a vision for your own life and then visioneering it, engineering a life that follows that model, you've got a construct there that can help you paint that picture.
You know, when you think about those four, there's probably one, if anybody had to go to the list saying, where do I want to start? I would say go to the last one you want to do, and it's probably the one you need most. Right. But because the other thing is these are all...
You're making this really hard for our listeners.
They're all linked. They're all linked.
Yeah,
right. So it is, how many people do we know live in their heads? Right? Or are so focused on the spiritual that they ignore other parts of their lives. Right. And yet, and the physical part, everything we do is a physical expression.
Right.
What do you think you're using to think with? Right. Those are still cells and the body system, the container matters, but all of these things are fused together.
Right.
So to your point around, we've got to bring those pieces together so that we can move towards wholeness. Right. Because if we say we're going to put all my chips just on this one and not on those. Best life, you'll get some pieces of it, but you're not going to get the whole thing. Right? Natural systems. Right. That's why the elements.
Yeah.
You need all four. What do you want to take rain out of it? How do you think this is going to go? If you say we're going to double down on fire and ignore the rest, how do you think it's going to? There is about this ongoing tension between them, but recognizing all of them need your presence, your deliberate view about how do you express this, right? How do you live into it? I think you've given some really beautiful ways to do it.
Again, it's that to wrap up that, and then I know we're heading into sort of closing thoughts here, but it's having full access to all of the resources that mind, body, spirit, right, heart have to offer. And I think
mind, body, spirit, whatever that other one is.
Right. Having full access to that. I mean, again, it's this notion of there's so much waiting to be discovered, so much waiting to be lived.
We are originally talked about maybe doing a 15-hour podcast, and then we thought that maybe it would be better if we did 15 one-hour podcasts or 16 45-minute podcasts. So there's so much that we have to look at and to explore, and to really each of these elements deserves a podcast all to itself, right? To be able to do that, and so. We do want to just, again, these conversations are so rich, and we thank you so much that all of you are part of this. Go ahead.
One more thing.
All right. One more thing.
Oh,
he's doing his really one more thing.
There he goes. One more thing. The time is now. Stop waiting. The time is now. Stop waiting. Most of us have been living our lives cause and effect. We're waiting for something to come into our lives that's going to make us feel better, make us feel happy. Cause and effect. It's time to start causing effect. You start making those choices, taking those steps, making those decisions. That happiness, that joy, that fulfillment that you're looking for is an inside job. The time is now. Stop waiting.
This boy is preaching.
I was just going to jump in and say, you can wait if you want.
No. I guess I won't now.
We do.
Pressure's on.
I do want to thank all of you that are taking part of this journey with us, taking and listening, and what can you do? What can you start doing right now? One of the things that I would love for you to do is to share this podcast with the people that are in your community, or the people that you want to be in your community, and maybe even add a comment when you share that around the 4 elements, and which one is the one that you are making a choice to start to explore more deeply, and what that might look like for you. And so that is one of the things that you can do right away to help get started on the journey, is to open and be vulnerable by sharing the podcast with others, and letting them know that you're taking this journey and inviting them along with it as well.
Don't forget, though, to hit the subscribe button, both on the podcast and on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely. And the third part is, we're going to keep providing resources that we find that are resonating for us, or that other people are finding working really well. So we're going to put them on the website, livingrichley.me/act. ACT, because it's all about acting. Like, we need to act. As you say, we need to introduce this cause into our life, that you are that cause. Join us there. Use those tools. They're there for, there'll be a host of things, but that's all there waiting for you right now.
Thanks again for following and for listening and for participating in this journey with us, and we look forward to the next conversation.